boom. That's my intro. This is just pointing at the camera and then it comes on too fast. We were just talking briefly behind the scenes that some intros are like too long and you're like checking your watch, you're like, what's going on? But yeah, I'm here with Gary Martin. How's it going, Gary?
Good. So where are you broadcasting from?
The Pacific Northwest. It's a blistery day here in the Pacific Northwest. I actually do have my heater on, so it's slowly warming up. So then I'll probably be removing some clothes as we go.
Okay,
The
well
strip stream, everyone.
I'm in Vancouver, Washington.
Oh, nice. You're in Washington also.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Vancouver's more south, like kind of close
Yeah, it's
to.
just across the river from Portland.
Cool, cool. Do you dabble within the Portland comics mafia? Do you know any of those people, or do you know that
Is
term?
that their
Or
official title?
yeah.
No, I've not heard of them.
Yeah, it's just Portland has a kind of big comic scene, but I don't know. I know,
Yeah, they do, but I try to stay out of Portland as much as I can.
yeah, I lived there for a little bit, just a few years, but I was there when the riots were happening, when the lockdown was happening, basically the worst time. And I have a very negative opinion of Portland because of that. I was like,
Yeah,
well, what am
well,
I even living here for? We can't even go out anywhere, paying kind of high rent. But you know who lives in Portland? He was actually my neighbor, but I found out later. But it was Robbie Rodriguez, who's like he's a pro. I don't really know what he does actually, but he's like a pro, work for Marvel or DC or something. But he's
I'm
famous
not
because
familiar with that name.
yeah, he's famous because early in CG he took a picture of his butthole and sent it to Ethan Van Sciver. So like just weird like hate mail or whatever.
Maybe I should try that.
Yeah, yeah. So we got Caleb Reynolds in the chat. How's it going, Caleb? We're letting kind of other people filter in, and then we'll be talking about Gary's book and stuff. We might jump in and just start talking about it a little bit here, and because we can always go over more of it later. But yeah. So Gary, we you're buddies with David Williams, and David's like a great guy too. And I just chat with him here and there. I don't know if he's even been on my channel yet, but I want to have him on soon too. He might show up in the chat sooner or later. So how far back do you and David Williams go though?
I worked on, I inked one of David's first professional jobs before he started working for DC. So I think
Cool.
he was like around 19 then.
Yeah, I know part of his lore is he started super early. I think he was a pro when he was 17 years old or something like that.
Yeah, he was like 18 or 19 then.
Yeah.
And that's when I met him and started working with him. So I've known him a long time, and we have done a lot of projects together and have gone through some stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. What about he's drawing Bass Reeves? Are you do anything on that one or no?
He's finished with Bass. It's
Oh, yeah.
it's waiting to be collected, but
Nice.
he did. Yeah, he's completely done with it, and I've seen a lot of the material. I think it's one of those legacy type jobs that people will associate David with Bass for a long time. It's that good. I mean, it's an amazing piece of
Yeah.
work.
Cool. Yeah, it is. It's super iconic. So is he inking himself? Because he can ink too, I guess. But
Yeah, on Bass, he's definitely he inked that himself.
okay. Yeah, and you also draw, which is some of the illustrations. So there's like so many sort of questions I have because it's kind of a little bit of a lost art is having the penciler, then the inker. And is that like, have you noticed that that's a little bit less of a thing as comics get more digital and the industry like dies more and more and stuff, kind of?
Well, I got into comics working for DC. That was my first professional work, and mainstream comics it's very specialized because of their schedules, their monthly schedules. It's hard for one artist to pencil and ink their own work and keep a monthly, do 20 plus pages a month, and that's why they have color artists, letterer, inker,
Oh,
penciler, just to keep up that schedule. And I originally wanted to be a pencil artist, but I just fell in love with inking and the process, and I that's why I stuck with it. It's not really work for me. It's something that I really enjoy. Drawing was always like work. I mean, I
I
had to
can
put up.
kind of relate to that. Like, is it like a little zen, kind of like you get in the zone and
Oh,
time flies
well, on
by?
my good days, not always, but
Yeah.
and
Yeah. And
inking, because I ink with a brush, I have good days and bad days. It's not always magical. Sometimes it's. I try not to swear. I mean, that's kind of like my credo in life. My daughter, she told me that's her goal in life is to hear me curse.
nice.
But yeah, if you were in my studio on my bad inking day, you might hear some salty language.
Yeah, that's cool.
But on good
So
days, it's magic, and the brush does what you want it to. The line you have in your head is what ends up on the paper, and that's when it's fun.
yeah, that is awesome. It says you started in 1980, right? So it's
Yeah, a
a
long
long
time ago.
road.
That's I started kind of as an assistant for different inkers, doing inking backgrounds at DC, and then I sort of graduated to inking full stories, and that's how I got into it. It took me a while. I didn't learn the craft as quickly as I wanted to, but it's like anything else. You just stick with it, and you get better, and it's something that you have to learn. It's not something that you just can automatically do, especially inking with the traditional tools. Brush inking, I think, is harder to learn than like if you're using pens or Coke quills. For me,
Yeah.
anyway, for me.
Yeah, and do you use pretty much exclusively brushes when you're inking, or do you
As much as I
sometimes?
can, like this piece, the Catwoman, that's all brush.
So even these really thin lines on her
Yeah,
face.
those all that stuff. Like if you see cross hatching that I do on anything, that's brush.
Cool. Yeah, that's cool. So yeah, I if I did that, it would not be Zen because I would be like, oh my God, I gotta get it. Like I screwed it up. But then like I know sometimes things can get Zen, but then for me too, penciling, not so much because it's kind of a lot of thought that goes into it and it gives you a headache almost. You can only do it so long. But the whenever like you're saying the kind of you get in the zone and you get that magic happening, it is
Yeah,
a really cool feeling.
yeah. So like that, all that cross hatching on his face, that's all brush. This whole piece is brush.
Yeah. How do you get your hands so steady? Is that like, do you even control your breathing or a lot of practice or
Uh,
what?
um, I kind of cheat. I use two hands. You know
Oh,
how like some painters will have I forget what you call those gadgets, like those sticks that you rest on the canvas and then you rest your hand on it. I do that with my hand. And so I put my hand on the paper and then I put my inking hand on top of it.
yeah, kind of like
And that
this or
gives
whatever.
me and I didn't even know I was doing that until, like somebody pointed it out. They're like, what are you doing inking with two hands? I was like, what? But it's just, yeah, it's just an extra point of contact because with the brush, you don't really feel pressure. You don't feel the paper like if you were
Yeah.
holding a pen or a pencil. It's all eye hand coordination, and
Ye-
it's easy to. That's what I meant by good days and bad days because it's a feel kind of uh, effort that you have to think about how much pressure you're putting down depending on
Yeah.
how thick you want the line to be. And so it's hit and miss. I mean, sometimes what you're thinking is what happens, and sometimes it isn't.
Yeah. It's like a little bit of a mind's eye almost. Do you ever ink like as a flex on a good day when the magic's happening? Could you be like Jordan when he hits a free throw with his eyes closed? Could you like do a straight, thin
With my
line with
eyes
your eyes?
closed, no,
Yeah.
no, absolutely not. Um, and part of the problem, I'm not a spring chicken anymore, and I actually have developed a tremor in my inking hand, and that comes and goes. So you add that to the mix and it could be problematic.
Yeah.
But I think I try to exercise and eat right and all that stuff, and that seems to help. That I don't get the tremor as often, and sometimes I'll have the tremor in the morning, and I'll just kind of work my way through it, and it'll go away. And sometimes it doesn't go away, and then I have to stop work and go do something else and try coming back to it later.
Yeah, that's another interesting wrinkle. There was the guy who was the artist for, he worked with Mark Miller doing American Jesus. I can't think of his name right now, but he said he got a tremor and he sort of retired almost like completely. But then once that was kind of him saying like, and kind of, but that like somehow released all the tension he had had once he made that decision. And then the tremor kind of started to go away. So then he was like, maybe I will come back to it. But he still struggles with it a little bit. And sometimes I guess it like I can picture where the inking it could look cool and it could add like some cool stuff to it, but definitely for the detail stuff you'd have to
Yeah,
wait or
for
whatever.
my style, it's tends to be more precise. That the trimmer doesn't does not help it, but maybe I should just go with it and see what happens.
Yeah, you always could, yeah, test it or something. What about this? So I see this texture here on the side of this piece, and you have this smoke billowing up, and it's just lighter. Is that a thing with the hatching that you're doing to create that?
Yeah, that you might recognize was a Bernie Wrightson. I think it was a poster that he did in pencil, and it was all kind of tonal. It wasn't line work, and so I thought it would be a I don't know what I was thinking, but I thought it would be a nice challenge to try to translate that into cross hatching,
Yeah, pretty
and
fun.
that's what that is it's all brush cross hatching. The straight lines on the organ, I ruled that stuff with the pen and a ruler, but everything else is brush.
Oh yeah, cool. How long does this take? Like a week, like
Well,
40
that
hours
that
or?
was a big piece. It was like 16 by 20 or in that neighborhood. So it took me probably about a week to do this, maybe 5 days.
Cool, cool, cool. Yeah, that is a lot of fun. What about, is there a rule for, so this might be, because we should tell the chat too, you have a book called The Art of Inking, right? By Gary.
Yes, the art of comic book inking.
Yeah. So that, I really want to check that out too. But that's how, what is that published through? Just kind of a regular, and when was it
That
that
came
published?
out. Dark Horse was the publisher, and the first volume of that came out about 20 years ago. And there have been update volumes that's been collected. The last publication of it was probably about 5 years ago, and it's out of print now. So their copies are scarce. I had about 8 copies left in my files that I put up on my campaign as a perk, and those eight
Oh,
copies sold out the first day.
yeah.
So I'm seriously thinking about doing a campaign or maybe a print on demand, something to reprint it. There seems to be, I don't know how many people want it, but I've heard a few people say, "Hey, can I get one of those?"
Yeah, it's part. I like. I'd be interested too, because it for me too. It just feels like inking is like in danger of being a lost art. So it's kind of a
Yes.
cool, fun thing that like an important. It feels kind of important. This is kind of part of that too. Like those two things as a double feature, and like you're saying that that happened immediately. Those sold out right away. But my question, one of the questions I was going to have is you can, so when you're building up hatching, do you like know in your head how many layers of hatching equals what percentage of gray that you're trying to create?
Exactly. That's yeah. Um, I tend to hatch the same way, using the same patterns, so I know how many layers it'll take to get a certain value of gray.
Yeah.
And on a piece like this, obviously I don't pencil in the cross hatching. I'll just block in a shape that, like those steps at the bottom, I'll just block in the shapes of the areas of the different tones that I want, and then
Yeah.
and then add the layers depending on how dark I want it to get. So if you see it like on the right side of the steps, it has more layers because it needs to be darker.
Yeah. Yeah, like something like this almost isn't, it's not that much line work. It's, I mean, it's like painting almost, where it's the tonal stuff is what's creating
But
the
that's all
image.
it is establishing the values of light and dark. And I do that first, and then adding the layers of cross hatching. I know how many layers I'll need to get that value.
Okay. So is it like you might like even mark it with the pencil and be like, this is 80% and you
I'll do,
do,
yeah, exactly. I'll do L for light, G for gray, or D for dark,
cool.
and then
Oh,
of
this,
course X for black.
yeah, cool. Yeah, this is very fascinating. There's
And then
one,
in the this art book, I'm going to have a couple of my pencils in it so you can see my codes.
oh, cool. Yeah, that's awesome. What about, so going back to 1980 and you start drawing backgrounds, even that's interesting to me because that's a little bit less of a thing now too. You don't really hear, I guess manga might do that where you have like an assistant who does
Right.
backgrounds.
Yeah, that's kind
Um,
of a lost thing of that apprenticeship, kind of thing where
yeah,
you're you know, it was common back then. It's pretty rare these days. I actually have not heard of anyone doing it. I've had a few people ask me if they could apprentice under me, but they don't live in my neighborhood, so that's kind of would be hard to do.
yeah. Um, yeah. So when you were coming up, then did you apprenticed under, did you have like some mentors that taught you what
Yeah,
you know?
Dick Giordano was the main artist that I work for, and he kind of passed me around to different guys um, that that worked in the DC offices, and kind of word got out, and so I ended up working for some guys at Marvel like Bob Layton, and Bob Smith was at DC. Who else? Ernie Colon, and just different guys that were there, and that kept me busy. Although I was slow and I was learning my craft, and back then my page rate was about $10 to $12 a page,
Mm.
and I might be able to knock out 2 pages a day. So yeah, and living in New York, that wasn't I wasn't living in the Ritz. Just let me tell you that.
Yeah. You're like scraping by.
Exactly, exactly. But I was learning a craft, and what I learned, it was just I probably learned more that in a month than I did everything up to that point. It was amazing, and that was
Yeah.
part of what I knew. The situation was that the apprenticeship situation was about the money. It was about learning the craft, and establishing the contacts, and that's how I ended up getting full time work.
Yeah, and at some point you start making a little more money and getting more comfortable with
Yeah, and then when you start inking full jobs, then you actually get a page rate, and page rates, they were never great. Um, it's not something that you can. Most people don't get wealthy working in comics. It's kind of when you think of comic book artists, you think of guys like uh, Rob Liefeld and Todd McFarlane and all these guys that make tons of money. That's the exception. Those are the guys that won the lottery. Most people are barely making a living.
yeah. Yeah, that's cool. We got 10 people watching. I just want to let everyone know we're talking to Gary Martin and we're checking out his book on Fund My Comic. It's called A Brush with Destiny. A lot of these awesome illustrations. It's like 112 pages, so a lot of illustrations. And we've been going over some of them, and you can see these techniques that are just amazing, all done with a brush. These super thin lines, the hatching. This is inking over some like famous illustrations. Like this is a Bernie Wrightson original pencil that then gets converted to the hatching work by Gary. Looks
And there'll be
amazing.
a chapter of I do a lot of recreations as commissions, and I'll have a chapter of recreation pieces that I've done.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. Let me throw this up real fast too, because you're sharing, and we have some. We can share a few more illustrations. That's some Marilyn Monroe, right? I get all the blondes mixed up. That might be a different one.
Well, yeah. Yeah, this is Marilyn. She,
Nice.
I wanted to do her for a long time, but she's so iconic. You can't, you have to get her right, or else it's, people are insulted. So this was something that I did this year. I mean,
Oh, cool. So this is recent work. This is amazing.
yeah. And again, this is all brush. Let me zoom in a little bit on the mouth and the nose. I'm really proud of that nose. I always worked under the assumption that if you like cross hatch on a nose, it makes the person look like an alcoholic.
I
And so
could see that, but yeah.
yeah, so I wanted to do this technique on her face and on her nose. And so I inked the nose first. And I thought, okay, the nose looks okay. And then I proceeded with the mouth. And then I usually don't do it that way, or do like one feature at a time. I usually, do the
Oh
complete.
yeah. So then it's not like if you do the whole thing and then do the nose, like crap, I ruined
Exactly.
it.
Yeah. So I'm starting to do that. It's like whatever I'm intimidated with, try to do that. I'll either do it first or last, depending on how brave I'm feeling that day.
Yeah. That's something that I forget from inking too. I can even relate just from the little inking I've done is you can almost get an adrenaline rush where you're like, go time, like it's do or die. We got to get this in one go. Are you ready? And you kind of pump yourself up. But that's like, because you do it, so seasoned, there might be a little less of that. But do you still feel some of that, like where you almost get like pumped up because of the how permanent ink is when you're working with it?
Oh yeah, I mean inking is the ultimate commitment. With you can cheat with a pencil because a pencil can be vague. You cannot be vague with an ink line. And
Yeah.
if your ink lines are vague, then you're not accomplishing the purpose of inking. So you have to be confident, and you have to go for it. If you're kind of second guessing yourself, then you're in the wrong you know headspace. You really need to be confident, and that comes from practice. That comes from knowing your craft. It comes from having an intention. When you sit down, you have a game plan, and you almost like a battle plan. You figure out the style you want, what kind of line weights you want, where the lighting's coming from. All that stuff you figure out ahead of time.
Yeah, and part of what you're bringing to it too, as like basically a master, is it's where you're not drawing lines too. Because I know noses are kind of hard for me to draw even, and I know usually if I'm drawing them wrong, I'm just drawing every line in my head that I think like for this like the bridge of her nose, I might draw a line there to delineate the bridge. But if you
Right.
do that, like it's the way the light, if you're painting with the ink, you shouldn't be drawing that line, and that's like
Well, I mean, that's the thing that, with inking, it's also knowing what not to ink.
yeah,
And the human eye makes a lot of connections. So you can get away, like example, that her hand on her cheek, I didn't continue that line all the way down. I wanted that illusion that she was pushing her face in with her hand,
yeah.
and having that light source on that side. I could get away with not having that line go all the way down, because the eye actually fills that in.
Yeah, it kind of
You
reads as
know,
like a super thin line then or whatever, like the
yeah, if
thinnest.
you know when the eye fills it in, like you said, like you mentioned, the bridge of her nose, you kind of see that line with your eye. And I
Yeah.
tend to put more lines in than I should. And so it's something that I'm trying to learn. A lot of the great illustrators, knew exactly what they were doing. And like I said, it's also knowing what not to ink.
Yeah, you can see some the dudes from like the 50s or 60s, they'll go real crazy with it where you almost have
Right.
to look twice at it and squint your eyes, but then you can see it and it's kind of cool when
Yeah.
that happens too.
So here's
Um
a piece I did as a commission. The guy wanted this all crosshatched, and
wow.
this was a big one too. I think it was like mm, It was around 16 by 20. Let me blow it up a little bit.
Cool. Yeah, it looks like photorealistic, and it's so cool that that's just like inked with a brush with
Yeah,
cross
and
hatching.
this is kind of a different crosshatch pattern. If I blow it up really big, you see there's short lines that butt up against each other, and it leaves like little spaces,
Yeah.
and that
It, gi-
creates a texture. I
yeah,
have
it gives it
to,
that more little more dirty texture or something.
yeah. So it makes the surface a little rougher. So I did that on the mask. I didn't do it on the gloves because the tips of the gloves are metal. So I wanted a little different texture for that.
Cool.
And then this is more my traditional like comic book cross hatching. It's
Yeah.
only 2 layers,
And
and
now
I
these are both of these that are all these are all you draw them too, right? Like you're
yes,
not just inking. Yeah.
yes.
Cool.
So if I blow this one up, you can see the cross hatching. It's only 2 layers, and
Cool.
to achieve the different values, I'll just go thicker with the line if I want it to be darker. And so they're
Yeah.
like little tiny feathering lines. The base of the line is thicker than the point.
Cool. I saw that on some hair that you were doing. Actually, maybe I can throw it up here even I saw it. If it was it up here or down? There was one that's kind of it, but oh yeah, like the hair here on Thor, it's like not even crosshatched. You're doing just
Right.
lines, but you can see the value change even just with that,
Yeah,
right?
just
That's
exactly, just by making the line thicker.
yeah.
And that's like a Franklin Booth technique. And Franklin Booth was kind of the father of inking. He's the one that Bernie Wrightson was studying when he did all his Frankenstein illustrations. He was doing the Franklin Booth techniques. And so if
Oh, cool.
you inkers out there, look up Franklin Booth. His work is just um, beyond amazing. I mean, it's staggering what he was able to accomplish with using those thick and thin line techniques.
Cool. I just wrote his name down. Um, what was I gonna say about? Oh yeah, Bernie Wrightson. Did you ever meet him or hang out with him?
I met him. I didn't hang out with him. He was on a different level. You know, he was royalty, and I was cleaning out the horse stalls.
So even then, they had a little bit of that kind of
Oh,
going on. And
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah.
levels of mastery, and he was always not only a fan favorite, but professionals loved him too. Aaron Lepresti tells a story. Aaron and I go back a ways. I inked him on his Sludge comic work for Malibu, and that's like back in the 90s. Um, him and I were at, I think it was a San Diego Comic Con, and Bernie Wrightson was a guest there. And we were working on Sludge at the time, and Aaron wanted to show Bernie his work. And so we went over to Bernie's table, and Aaron had a stack of pages, and there was a line to see Bernie. So we got in line with all the, with the kids. And here we are, a couple of professionals staying in line with the kids. So we get up to the table, and Aaron puts the pages down, and Bernie's looking at him, and he's saying, "Oh, Mr. Wrightson, you're such a great inspiration to me. I've studied your work for years, and I wanted to meet you." That kind of thing. He was just going on and on and on, and Wrightson wasn't saying anything. He was just looking at the pages. And then and I'm standing behind Aaron, like looking over his shoulder and not saying anything. And so when Aaron finishes his gushing, uh, Bernie hands the pages back to Aaron, and all he says is, "Nice inking."
Ha!
And of course, I lost it. I just busted out laughing. And Aaron was so mad because Bernie didn't know that Aaron didn't ink it.
Yeah,
He had
that's
no idea.
hilarious. So it's a compliment to you.
Yeah. And so yeah, I when Aaron is pushing me around, I'll just remind him of that, Bernie writes in story and it shuts him down.
Yeah, that's awesome. How do you get this texture on Wonder Woman straps
That's
here?
yeah, that's splatter.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so you have to mask everything that you don't want splatter on. So pretty much 95% of the piece has to be masked off. And then I use a toothbrush and just dip it in the ink and flick it with my thumb. And
Cool. How
there's
often do you do
I
that? Have
don't
you?
I don't use it a lot because the masking part takes longer than the actual splatter technique. But it looks cool,
Yeah,
and
it does look cool. It also gives you that feeling. You're like, how did they even do that? I like whenever I see that. It's kind of like a fun thing about inking. Um, this one's pretty amazing too. Who drew? So this is penciled
that's a
over.
recreation. Wally Wood was the original artist on that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
I
did
guess.
a portfolio with different pieces of historical tableaus, and this was one of them.
Yeah, that's cool. I was just thinking like he's a legend too, but it's some of it's just generational. Like Bernie Wrightson he's older than you guys anyway,
Yep,
right? Like I mean
yep.
he's passed away now, but yeah. So it's some of that too. It's not just that he's like the royalty. It's a little bit he's just the older
Yeah. So who's
generation.
royalty now? Guys like Art Adams and Adam Hughes. That.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and kind of like maybe Frank Miller. Um
Well, that's debatable.
yeah, I was just gonna say he kind of got canceled.
Yeah, he
So
he he kind of lost his way a little bit,
yeah.
but he was not someone to produce a lot of work. Someone like Art Adams who's still blowing people away. Um, not that many artists in their golden years stick with it like Art Adams, and he might be getting more technical, more detailed than he
That
used to be, which
that's
is
cool.
kind of odd. Yeah,
Yeah, I need to like Google him because I'm more familiar with his 80s and 90s stuff.
yeah,
And I
his
was
stuff.
like,
He's coming out with a new art book, a coffee table art book. Um, Flesk Publications, I think it's coming out in a month or two, and it has a lot of his really heavy illustrated pieces where you can see he uses lots of cross hatching, and his detail is just is crazy good.
cool, cool. Yeah, and I guess there are it's guys where have the lifetime commitment is always impressive and fun to see that in comics. Um,
But
yeah,
yeah, Art is a guy that I steal from. I steal from a lot of the greats.
yeah. What about him? You ever hang out with him?
Art Adams, no. um, Art, well, we never really lived in the same city, but he's kind of elusive. He has a small inner circle. David Williams knows him pretty well. David is the kind of guy that makes friends with someone like within the first 5 minutes that he meets them.
Oh, cool. And
Yeah.
you're infamous for pranking people though. I know this just from the one stream that we had together, but like that doesn't so you can make friends that way, just prank them.
Well, enemy is more like it. My
Yeah.
pranks tend to take on a life of their own and become much bigger than I anticipated, which makes the prank more successful, but maybe my relationship with that person not not so
You
great.
get the opportunity, you're like, I can't pass this up. I have to do it.
Yes. Yep. Hey,
Have
I
you ever
see Jimmy.
pranked have
Jimmy
you ever
Reyes
pranked
is in the chat. Hey, Jimmy.
Jimmy, what's up? Jimmy's an inker too. It's fun inking. It's a whole other language that I kind of barely understand. So it's fun to like just talk and learn more about it. Um, but what I was going to ask you, you ever pranked David Williams?
I don't need to prank David Williams. He kind of pranks himself. Um, Years and years ago, we were talking about playing basketball during the San Diego Comic Con, like getting a bunch of us together and like leaving the convention and finding a place to go play. So a couple of months before the con, David was constantly calling me and trash talking. Yeah, I mean, and David is a really good trash talker. So I was hearing his trash talking for literally for months before we got together to play. And the day before we were going to play, I think we're going to play on a Sunday. He shows up on Saturday dribbling a basketball in the convention floor. I could hear him, like across the convention. Somebody's dribbling a basketball. And then he dribbled it all the way up to Artist Alley to where I was. So we went out to lunch and he's dribbling the ball, and saying, "Oh, I could touch that sign up there." And he'd jump up and touch it. Say, "Can you do that?" And, yeah, I can, but I'm saving it for tomorrow. So that evening, there was a party, a company party. It might have been a Dark Horse party at a hotel facility. And we show up at the party after dinner, and there were people at the party that were eating there that had dinner at the party. And so there were tables set up and tablecloths and waiters clearing, but there were still people sitting around with dishes and that kind of thing. So David is, again, trash talking and trying to prove his leaping prowess. And he decides to jump over a folding chair to prove to me, his springs. And he doesn't clear the chair. The folding chair folds up on his leg, and he goes down. It was almost like a Don Adams Get Smart routine where he's tangled up in this chair, and he grabs a tablecloth as he goes down and jerks it, and dishes fall off the table. People jump up and are trying to help him, and it's only making things worse because he's trying to spring back as quick as he can. I mean, it was a complete chaos. And his wife was there with us, Sandra, and she's standing behind me, and I'm turning around looking at her to see what her reaction is, and she's just standing there rolling her eyes like she's seen it all before. So that was a situation where I didn't have to do anything. David pranked himself.
Yeah. It's like White Man Can't Jump comic book version.
Exactly. That's exactly what it was.
Because you mentioned eye to hand coordination in basketball, are you athletic at all? Did you play sports growing up or anything like that?
Yeah. I played basketball in college, and that's why I didn't trash talk back to David, because I knew, David was a street ball player, and street ball cannot compare to,
The
collegiate
fundamentals.
sports. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did my talking on the court. I'll just put it that way.
Oh, so you guys did eventually have
Yeah, we
your.
did play. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah, there's a long tradition of good athletes being good artists. I know Frank Frazetta is like obviously a famous example because
Oh yeah, he was. Yeah, yeah.
he was almost a pro baseball player.
In fact, I heard stories that he liked to goof off more than he'd like to work, where he would go play baseball and stuff in the afternoon and grab his fellow artists, and they all go play instead of working, and they missed a lot of deadlines doing that.
That's fun. That's cool.
But
Um,
Frank, yeah, Frazetta was like the leader of that group. I mean, he was the man, and everyone knew it. So Frank wanted to stop work and go play baseball. You you went and played baseball.
was he kind of the Bernie Wrightson generation, like a little
No,
a little bit before you?
he was before that. He
Okay.
was the guy that one of the guys that Wrightson tried to emulate.
Oh yeah. Now that you mentioned it, I can kind of see that his early inked stuff is actually he was like super good at that too. And
Oh
then he
yeah,
got
yeah. In terms of comic book inking, I would put Frazetta at the very top. What he did, I don't think anybody else has come close. Wrightson came close. Um,
cool.
what
That's
Frazetta
kind of
did, in my opinion, is that he had this, I call it controlled spontaneity, where
oh
you
yeah.
look at the lines and they look spontaneous, but they're actually super, super controlled, but they don't look controlled. And to me, that's the master of the craft when you can do both. Wrightson did that well.
Hmm.
If you look at Frazetta's original art or get good reproductions of his art and you see how tiny his lines were, comics back then didn't reproduce very well. So you didn't see it in the printed work, but in the original art, like his Johnny Comet newspaper strip stuff is just the inking on it is just amazing. So good. And you didn't see it in the newspaper, but if you get a chance to see the originals, like Heritage Auction, you go to their website and look up Frazetta. You see some of his original art
Cool.
reproduced large, so you can blow it up and see the detail.
I'd be curious how to see how much he pencils because sometimes they can get a little bit of that effect by kind of penciling less and moving to inks sooner if you are the penciler and the inker.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and I wonder if he was doing really minimalist pencils.
Well,
That's
it
another
wasn't.
thing that
Yeah,
like
some of the pencils that I've seen of his, they weren't real tight. You know, when because he always inked his own work. So I think you're right that he added some of it in the inking stage.
yeah, yeah, that's cool. But that's cool to hear that I don't think that many people might say that and put him at number one. That's a cool original opinion we're getting straight from the source, Gary Martin,
But
top
there's
inker.
yeah, a lot of guys steal from him that and don't admit it, or but you
Yeah.
can see it in their work, and it's obvious that they have. Even guys like okay, Kevin Nolan is up there. I mean, he's one of the greats in comic book art. And one time I was looking at Frazetta and noticing Kevin Nolan cross-hatching techniques in Frazetta's work. Well, Frazetta predated Nolan by, 50 years. So it's like, what's going on here? And at the time, I was putting together the inking book, and Kevin Nolan contributed to that. So I had Kevin's phone number, and so I called him up and said, "Hey, Kevin, I'm looking at Frazetta. So my question is, have you been influenced by Frazetta?" And he said, "Oh yeah, absolutely. I've been swiping Frazetta for years."
Hmm.
And so if you see techniques and recognize them, it's really hard to come up with something new that we're all stealing from each other.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Oh, and Frazetta too, because he got so famous from painting, people like forget about his comic art.
Right.
So, and then yeah, he almost like peaked in comic art and then moved on to painting and
And
um,
that's how actually I fell in love with comics is the Conan paintings that Frazetta did for the paperbacks.
oh, cool. How
And
old
so
were
I
you when you
started
saw
going
those
to
then?
bookstores and comic shops looking for those covers, and in doing so, I started buying comic books. So Frazetta
Nice.
kind of got me into that.
Nice. That's cool. By the way, 12 people watching. How's it going, everyone? Thanks for being here. We're hanging out with Gary Martin and we're talking about his book that's on Fund My Comic. It's a collection, 112 page book, like a big tome of these awesome illustrations. Almost all of these are either 11 by 17, like artboard, or bigger, inked by brush. It's like even this, like Catwoman here, like I was amazed to hear that this is inked by brush. That's so cool. Um, and you know, this cross hatching with the brush, the technique's amazing. He's also famous for publishing the main inking how-to book, which what that's called inking for comic books.
The art of comic book inking.
Yeah, the art of comic book inking. And like we were talking a little earlier that is a good idea if that if you can hopefully Dark Horse doesn't like hold the exclusive rights or whatever, but yeah, if you
No,
can.
I own the rights, so it's up to me if I'm going to do it or not.
Yeah, cool. That could be. Yeah, I mean, you never know. You can wait, like, because it's sometimes it's like the inverse of the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Like, I don't want to be that guy who's like, do it, I'll buy it, and then you get like one sale, and I'm like, shit. I guess I
Yeah,
guessed wrong.
I'm thinking about doing the possibility of doing a print on demand. And
Oh
if I
yeah,
could work that out, then I wouldn't have to do a fundraising campaign.
yeah, yeah. That could be cool. Amazon can do that pretty well. I don't know if that's when you were thinking, but
That's what I've heard. I'm looking into it, and that might be a good option for this because you know, a book about a how-to book on inking is pretty specialized. It's not going to be a huge audience that wants it, but the ones that want it are hardcore. So I don't want to leave them hanging.
yeah, yeah. And like I mentioned, but the appeal that I kind of feel is almost like a historical what's it called, like where you just want to like because it's sort of becoming a lost art, so you just want it for that reason,
Yeah,
just to kind of.
preserve the craft. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. And then real quick, I want to talk just a little bit about this Joan of Arc one because it's pretty cool, and this is a cool example of inking where this it reads immediately and instantly, and some of that's the layout helps too, but it's a lot of it's the inking, which is really hard. Like someone else could ink this and it could be a mumble jumble where you don't really see what's going on or whatever, but you can read it instantly. And then it's almost like this doesn't need to be colored and it shouldn't be colored. If it's like the best inking, then it's like coloring would almost make it worse.
Most of my pieces are like that, that they're not meant to be colored.
Yeah,
Obviously, this is a different style than just straight up comic book work, where the comic book work is meant to be colored. But these illustrations, most of them were not. And I've had a few people, I'll post them like on Facebook, and they say, "Oh, can I color this?" And I say, "Sure, go ahead." And then I've yet to have someone color one of these pieces, and I think it's elevated it. It usually diminishes it because
yeah,
of everything that's in the black and white stage.
yeah, yeah. Like for example, even this Ghost Rider, like it's pretty much just flats, because if you do anything beyond flats, then you're messing with the tones that you've already set up because you already did all the work. So it's like, yeah, maybe you could do flats and it would look
Exactly. To
okay.
color it, you're just doing flats, and that's not really coloring. I mean, anybody can do that. So I mean, you could get creative with the flames, but other than that, that's you. There's not much. You know, I have not given a color artist much to work with on something like this.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, people are posting the link. If we get any backers while we're talking, it's called the Narwhal Nudge, which then became just the Nudge, which is like a wrestling move, like the Nudge. And then it became the Nooge. I changed it to the Nooge. So if we get the Nooge going, we'll get a little backer or two talking to Gary. And as always, if it doesn't go up, well, first off, if I refresh it and it doesn't go up, that means somewhere in the world a puppy died. So we definitely want it to go up. But
I
and then
see that Henry Bemis has posted the link. Thanks, Henry. Glad to see you here. I appreciate it.
yeah, yeah, thanks. So jump in here and get this book. And yeah, even if it doesn't go up, it's good to get people get their eyes on it. They kind of ingest and know it's out there. They end up packing like a week or two later. Sometimes that kind of stuff happens. So it's cool that you're out promoting it. Yeah, and I want to get more sales for you
Yeah,
in
if I
case
could
get more.
get one backer tonight, then I'll go to bed with a smile on my face.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You heard it, chap. So please do me the honor. I had a Matt Fowler on with his comic Tiger Blue 3, and I was begging the chat to back, and he's like, "I'm not begging, just so you know. The comic's great and I'm just selling it." And I'm like, "I know, I know, I know. But I'm begging. Please chat back this book." And I don't know if he was almost annoyed because I was like taking it too far, but
But
um,
that's, that's part of it is when we're doing campaigns. You, I just want to sit at my drawing table and do the work and, just put it out there and have it sell itself. But it doesn't work that way. You've got to tell people about it. You got to get on social media and say, hey, look at me. And, that's basically what we're doing. So the people in the chat, the people that are backers, uh, they're patrons in the truest sense of the patron and artist relationship, and that goes back as far as art was done, for commercial purposes. There would not be a Sistine Chapel if it wasn't for a patron that to pay Michelangelo to do it. And not that this stuff is, Sistine Chapel level, but that patron artist relationship it keeps the artist working, and it's
it's
it's absolutely
it's
invaluable. And my point is that we really appreciate you guys and everything that you do.
yeah, we're definitely it's getting even more like that. Yeah, like more direct relationship with the artist and the patron. And yeah, like in the medieval times or Renaissance, it was like kings were patrons sometimes. And so
Right.
chat, you're kings. If you back this, you're a king. Oh, yeah.
So here's a
I
piece. It's a reinterpretation of a Alex Ross watercolor painting. So I
yeah.
wanted to reinterpret his color into black and white and gray tones. And I did it all with cross hatching. So I'll blow it up so you can see some of the cross hatching.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it looks amazing. Another thing this is reminding me of that I've seen it sometimes like with people who use a lot of black any ink or like Magnolia is something I kind of want to study for my own work is they'll use a lot of black, but it doesn't feel dark. Like the image doesn't feel like noir, moody, dark. It's at night or it's in the shadows, but they're using a lot of black. And I'm like, that's a cool
Well,
balance to
yeah,
have
it's kind
because
of a trick that if you use a lot, I think the reader gets used to it. And then that kind of lessens the effect.
yeah,
Uh, it becomes, I think the human eye adapts to it, and it doesn't become a stark environment anymore.
yeah. Actually, a little bit what you're talking about with that too is with art in general, there's like a leap of faith period of the art where when you put the first black stroke on, it can look like wrong, but you kind of have
Yes,
to keep going.
the leap of faith is a good way to put it. Is that again, you picture the image in your head of what it will look like, but that's just a guess. And then you
Yeah.
start inking and you're hoping it looks as good as what it does in your head. And sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. And that's what keeps me coming back is when it actually looks better than what I imagined it to be.
Yeah, that's cool. What about these huge blacks? Like for the background for this piece, is that inked with a brush kind of
Yeah,
too?
that's
Just
I like on my original art, I like the blacks to be really dark. I don't like any kind of tonal, you
mm.
know, variance in the blacks. And so I use Higgins Black Magic ink. And if you use that before, if you leave the cap off, it gets darker and thicker.
Oh yeah,
And so I have
cool.
different formulas, for like thin lines. I dilute a little bit with water, so it's actually dark gray. The black I'll do last, so I'll do all the line work first, erase the pencils, and then fill in the black with this really, really, really dark black, and that makes it more consistent. And to me, it makes the original more appealing. I don't like seeing like if you see a Mignola original, his blacks are they're really not black. It's a kind of dark gray, and you can
Mm.
see layers. You can see the brush strokes and all that. Some people like that. I don't. I
Yeah.
in the line work I want to see it, but not in the black area.
Yeah. It's cool to be able to create that thick, perfect black. And it's a little harder than you'd think. I've noticed like if I sit down and try and do it, you're like, shoot, like how do you even do it? It's like but like you're saying, there's almost tricks to the trade with that. Like you can't
Yeah.
even buy the ink to do it. You have to like let the ink dry slightly so
Well,
it
yeah,
thickens
Higgins
even more.
Black Magic. Just leave the cap off for a couple of weeks, and it will get darker.
Yeah, and then it gets kind of almost
If it
plasticky.
gets too dark, I just add a couple drops of water.
Yeah, cool. Cool. 21 people watching. People, thanks for popping in here. We're talking to Gary Martin, selling his book. I will update it, and hopefully we don't kill a puppy, but we might. But then what we do then is, we wait for it to update. But if it's still at 64, here we go. Then the chat knows. They know, they start to feel bad, and then
So we can openly shame them. Is that what you're saying?
yeah. Oh, it did. It went up one. It went
Oh,
up one.
excellent. Okay, that's one.
So,
We met the goal. Then I can
yeah. So
I
that's
can
the NOODGE. We got the NOODGE in here, and that's Gary Martin with going to sleep with a smile on his face. But of course, whenever we get one, we're like, hey, can we get two? Can we get two? Anyone? Anyone?
Yeah, that's a challenge.
Yeah. But yeah. So 14 days to go, and then are you just gonna print it and fulfill it? And what's next? Let me ask you that, or like in
Um,
general.
hopefully I'll get enough backers that I can print it and fulfill it. If I'm not in the black on this, so to speak, then I might put it up as a I forget what you call it. It's kind of an ongoing thing, and I'll do that for maybe one more month.
Mm-hmm.
And that also give me time. There's a couple of pieces that I'm working on that I want to include in the book, and one of them is a really large commission that's like 3 pages. It's it's like 33 by 17 on one board, and I'm about a third finished with it, and that'll be a double page spread in the
Cool.
book. And then there's a couple other pieces that I want to do, and so that'll give me time to finish those pieces, and then the book will be done, and I can fulfill it. And I may do the inking book after that. There's also another project that I wanted to do with another artist. I won't talk about that because that's further down the line. My original goal for this book, this is my first campaign, my first crowdfunding. I want to do a graphic novel, a story that I've come up with. I have an outline in my head, and I want to draw it and ink it. Excuse me. But the idea of doing a crowdfunding campaign and producing the work from scratch was kind of intimidating, as my first project. And
Mm-hmm.
so putting out an art book not only will help fund the graphic novel, but it'll give me a little bit of experience in the crowdfunding world. And I mean, I'm new to this whole thing, CG. I've only been involved in this for a couple of years. David Williams called me up about 2 years ago and said, "Hey, I'm involved in a project with Gabe El Taib. It's called Truth, Justice, American Way. Do you want to ink it?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, if you're drawing it." And he says, "Well, let me tell you about Comicsgate and
Mm-hmm.
what you're getting yourself into." He knew I was a conservative, so he told me what Comicsgate was, and I had no idea. Um, I wasn't working in mainstream anymore. I was working for American Legion magazine and different things like that,
Do
but
you
not.
think you were blacklisted at all at any point for
I
being
was,
conservative?
but uh, not for my politics.
For your
Uh,
pranks?
Not for my pranks. I didn't get along with a lot of the people that worked there. The politics in comics was smothering. I mean, it's
Yeah, and so it's not even politics like conservative liberal. It's politics like the cool kids and
like
the
company
cliques.
politics. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, they literally grind the creativity out of you because
yeah,
of their, inner office squabbles. And it's, that's a whole nother, we could talk for hours about that topic, but so I kind of phased myself out of the industry. And plus the page rates, when I left comics, I shouldn't say comics, I should say mainstream. I was making less money with my page rate than I had 20 years prior. My page rate was going down.
oh yeah,
And that was like across the board. It wasn't just me that they were lowering their page rates. And what's the cost of living percentage in 20 years? It definitely doesn't go down. So
mhm.
I couldn't afford to ink anymore. I mean, even doing inking 2 pages a day, which is a lot for me in comics, I still couldn't pay my bills.
Yeah,
And that's part of, company politics, is that they keep you down on purpose. They keep their foot on your neck on purpose. Um, they have an open policy of not allowing creators to stay on books for a long period of time. Remember the old days when you'd have a writer artist team on a title, they could be on the title for years. They're, known for that title. Um, Marvel had a policy of only allowing a creative team to be on a book for 4 issues. And that's why you saw these, like 3 or 4 issue story arcs, and then they bring in a new creative team. And how, as a freelancer, how do you make a living doing that, where you get work for 4 months and then you're looking for work again?
yeah,
It
yeah. I
was,
remember that feeling. Even that it's not like they're technically not firing you, but it kind of feels like that, where they're like, "Yeah, we don't have any more work for you," and then you're just like,
yeah. I mean,
"What the heck?"
if there was a 4 issue and out situation that you knew going into it, and they were loyal to you, they would have something lined up, something else lined up for you, but they don't. And you soon realize that they're not looking out for you. There's so many fish in the sea from their point of view, that getting steady work in the mainstream is very difficult.
Mhm.
And that's probably the main reason, all the stuff going on and how they ran the companies. And the smaller companies don't pay as well as like the Marvels and DCs. And so trying to get your page rate, that's always like an ongoing battle.
Mhm.
And working under the monthly deadline system, you're constantly thinking of ways to cut corners in the work so you can meet the deadline. And in a crowdfunding situation, it frees up the artist to do your best work. So the stuff in this art book, I can proudly say it's my best work. And this graphic novel that I want to work on, it will be my best work. I
Yeah,
spend, like 2 or 3 days on one page.
cool. That's exciting to hear that. Yeah, you might have a graphic novel coming out, and it, like you're saying, it is a good idea to sell like the stuff that's complete, and while that's selling, you can be working on the thing they're going to sell next. I guess it's
But
like building the train
that's
tracks within the
my
train.
game plan. If it works or not, we'll see. But it we'll have to just keep plugging away. And this whole crowdfunding thing it is a gamble. To do that amount of work, it has to be a situation where some money is coming in. And some people are able to do it where they're working on other projects. For me, that would be difficult. See, I want to do this level of illustration, like this layup piece. I want to
Hmm.
do this level of illustration in the artwork in the graphic novel.
Hmm.
And I won't be able to if I don't have jobs and I'm just working on the graphic novel and not having a publisher, backing me. It's something that
Yeah.
I'm going to have, a bank account to live on while I'm doing it. And that's the reason for the art book.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and you can play with the balance of it, like having it some pages done, and then you're funding to finish it. And if it doesn't reach funding, you can figure out something else. But the only problem with that is, so then you can get potentially a nest egg. Like if you have 10 pages or maybe even five or so, and they all look amazing, that might sell a little more than even like an art book would. So you could get like potentially the nest egg to fund the production of the book. But then the only thing to worry about is, and it's nice because it's not a super bad risk. Like if you don't make the money, then you don't have to proceed, or you can find something else or whatever. But then that does often mean you don't want the book to be like 3 years late. So you can be like
Right.
honest that it will take 2 years to do. Like maybe that's something, but then you might lose some backers because that's too long for them. But there's all this balance. But people in general, they definitely kind of don't like if it's like 2 or 3 years from when they back it to when they get the book. But even like,
Right.
I wonder if someone was honest about that, and then it's not technically late, because that's the problem too, is it's being late. Like they'll say it'll be ready in a year, and then it's actually like 2 years after that 1 year, and then people are like, like, then they kind of get the bad taste. But that's stuff you'll be able to kind of think about. And you're part of the Graybeards pretty much now, right? You hang with those guys.
Yeah. Although, I mean, it's a draw stream, but I don't draw on it.
Okay.
I Aaron Lopresti, Kelsey Shannon, and David Williams do the heavy lifting, and I just sit back and make wisecracks. But Aaron, it's his stream, and as he's drawing, he can't read the chat, and people
Mhm.
are sending him money and super chats, and they're saying some interesting things, and he misses it. So I offered to like sit in and read the chat, and the other reason is I don't like people watching me while I'm working.
Oh yeah.
It's hard for me to concentrate if I know someone is watching me. And I tend to be slow. I don't think I could create a finished pencil and inked piece in 2 hours, and that's what they're doing every week. And some of them are colored too. And
Mhm.
there's no way I could compete with that. So those guys, what they do every week is amazing. So you haven't seen Graybeards, I recommend people
Yeah.
in that to check it out.
So you're
He's
like
on
you're like their
Wednesday
co-host.
afternoons.
Yeah. Definitely keep, yeah, just keep hanging with them too, because then it kind of gets your name and personality out there. I think as people know you more and more, that will help, and your sales will improve more too, because people, they're definitely like they're like some of your stories about your pranks. That's what I'm gonna say. Like I want to have you on again, maybe before this closes, but in the next like couple weeks or a month or something, maybe with David and whoever else. But and we can chat just a little bit more because there is a lot more to cover. A lot of the history stuff is really interesting, and even like you're saying, the office politics is interesting.
Yeah,
And
that'd
then
be fun. And
yeah, and
David's
some more
been
stories of the
around. I mean,
pranks.
he's worked for a lot of companies. He worked in animation for years. So yeah, he has a lot of stories.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. But yeah, we'll kind of start wrapping it up here. We're got 22 people watching. Chat, thanks for being here. We did get a sale, and there might have even been another. I'm scared to kill a puppy though, so I won't update it.
We can
We'll
do
just see
that
later.
right before we say goodnight, if you want. If you're
Yeah.
nervous.
Okay, that's what we'll do. We'll kill it. We'll see if it goes up. So, chat, you got a second to back right now if you're thinking about saving the puppy. And I will just kind of update this, and then we'll get out of here. But I think, other than that, Gary, thanks for hanging out and thanks for chatting.
I
And
appreciate you having me, and a lot of people in your chat I don't know yet. I see some familiar names, but there's a lot of them that I don't know. So hopefully, even if you don't back it, appreciate if you just look at the artwork and
Yeah, help us retweet it and
spread
stuff.
the word if you can. That goes a
Yeah,
long way.
yeah, and that is, oh, a puppy died. Chat, aren't you sad that a puppy died? Now you guys can now we'll get like 4 backers because they'll all be sad that a
Yeah, you
puppy died.
animal haters.
Yeah, yeah. Get PETA in here. No, no, no. PETA's bad representation. But yeah, what was I gonna say? Oh, it is like so even like so my audience, whatever it's we'll get views after the stream too. But it's nice because it's like a Venn diagram, and I do think that mine does tap into some people that haven't even seen or been aware of this book yet. So that's good. Have you been on like with Reenie or Bancroft? Those are a couple
I'm
possibilities too.
scheduled to be on her show. She's out of the country right
Cool.
now, and plus she's very popular, so I had to take a number.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, that's great. She's gonna help you too. Yeah, she does a cool
Yeah, and I've been
promo
on
stream.
Shane's and who else? Kelsey's and
Nice.
I've got a Mike Barron, and I've got a few others coming up.
Cool. Yeah, a lot of times it's like the tipping point kind of thing. Like people aren't necessarily even backing, but they're seeing you live, and then they end up backing on like the last day. So you're kind of building the goodwill for that kind of stuff to happen
Yeah,
too.
that's
So
the scary part. The ones that do it on the last day, and you don't know what the numbers are going to be. I want it to be consistent. I want to see a pattern so I can predict. I don't like this, working without
yep. I don't
doing.
like it either. Yeah, and even I don't know if you experience, but it usually you have a great first day and then it slows down. So then you
Yeah,
got to deal with that where you're like, oh, that gives you a headache almost. You're like
yeah.
the dopamine, whatever, being all weird in your brain. But
No one wants to
crowdfunding,
read. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, like if I could, like I almost want to like just travel 3 months to the future. I don't want to
Yeah.
like be, uh, but yeah, okay. So I'm gonna click the end the stream button, everyone, and then I'll just be back later with another stream. I think I've got another stream tomorrow for a little promo thing. So chat, keep an eye out for that. And yeah, Gary, thanks for joining me. Stick around just for a second, and I'll say hi behind the scenes too, Gary.
Okay. And yeah, again, thanks for having me, and thank you for everyone in the chat. I appreciate you guys tuning in. There's a lot you can do tonight, so I appreciate you watching this.
Caleb says Narwhal killed the pup before I could hit submit. So you might have got one other backer. Caleb, if that's true. Thanks, man. But yeah,